The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Best odds guaranteed on all Irish and UK racing. 18 plus. See GamblingCare.ie.
Welcome to episode 28 of the Racing Pod on Off the Ball with John Duggan and Johnny Ward. Remember, we're here every week with analysis, race previews, tips, interviews, stories, the crack as well. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part is exclusively for members. So be sure to sign up by going to offtheball.com/join. And Johnny Ward, how are you today?
Good, JD. Off to Clonmel tomorrow. So lots of racing of late. A lot of racing in Ireland at the moment between jumps and flat. And we're recording this a little bit earlier this week, but we've seen at the Curragh and Leopardstown in the midweek cars, like just the pedigrees of these flat horses week in, week out. Like the first race at Leopardstown, there were two Frankels in it, like for Aidan O'Brien, and we'll talk about his new stallion from the weekend that emerged as a stallion. But like, it's just fascinating to see you've these amazing pedigrees in Ireland in a post kind of Galileo world, in these really good maidens. And we've had, for Irish racing, the run of it on the flat has been really amazing the last week or so, particularly at Epsom.
So the Derby.
What did you make of it?
Well, Stewie Griffin, I love Family Guy. Stewie Griffin loses it with the machine gun a few times, and Family Guy absolutely goes spare. And that's how I kind of felt metaphorically on Saturday evening, because Aidan O'Brien told the world that this horse was the best thing since sliced bread, the best 2-year-old he ever had, made mistakes at the Guineas. And I'm looking back at this, and I haven't gambled properly like a man in 19 years since I got into responsible jobs. Haven't made 4 figures in 17 years, and that's a good sign, because it means that, you know, I'm being sensible. But in hindsight, if you're going to get into the investment area and treat it like any kind of investment, if you're going to go into the stock market or everything, this is the best 3-1 bet in hindsight since Isterbrack in 1998 at the Champion Hurdle. This looking back on this, it's City of Troy. Just forget about the Guineas run. Yeah, everything that else that was said about the horse materialised at the Derby.
Yeah, you've kind of summed up my take on it as well. From my perspective, I was very, very annoyed with myself. I was just about to start my shift at Tramore races, and I like when there's a lot of... I have a very bad attention span, possibly have ADHD, but certainly have a bad attention span. So there needs to be stuff going on in the background for me to kind of feel like solitary confinement wouldn't suit me at all. And I like races to be on before I go to the races, and I like races to be on in the background, and I like stuff to make the shift go faster at the races. So we had Epsom leading into Tramore, which started at about 5, and Epsom was at 4, half 4 of that, so it was leading nicely into it. And there were a lot of people at the track early. It was a beautiful day, and they were all watching the Derby. And I was just, as they were getting into stalls, slight delay, will I back the horse? And my plan was I was going to back him and have a saver on Los Angeles, who was give or take 5-1.
Yes.
So you'd have a fifth of your stake on Los Angeles just to get the money back. And they're going into the stalls, and I'm like, you were gambling on Aidan O'Brien's take on the race here, multiplied by the fact that the horse does have to bounce back, but there's all this confidence. I did not think it was a good Derby, apart from the possibility of Auguste Rodin. I mean, Los Angeles had won the trial quite well, but not exactly impressive. And this horse that ended up finishing second, and Beyond Friendly, you know, he's a decent horse, but like, you wouldn't have thought he was going to win a Derby going into the season or whatever. And then it all unfolded. And part of me, this is something I do struggle with in racing, when I don't have a financial investment, when I should have had a financial investment, when you're wallowing in the virtuosity of a Derby winner like him, who I think Irish racing kind of needs to an extent, and then you're like, this is amazing, but why didn't I back it?
I was totally sick with hindsight. Totally sick. As sick as Isterbrack in 98.
It's 3-1. It wasn't like he was 6-4.
Isterbrack was 3-1 the first, and then the next two, well, obviously flat race is different because City of Troy can't run on the Derby again, but Isterbrack ran in the next two Champion Hurdles and was odds on both times. Yeah, you could go to Cheltenham, and I've gone to Cheltenham, and I've tipped Gold Cup winners at 12s and 7s, and I've tipped a Grand National winner at 80-1. But that's more in hope. That's more in, that's a 5 each way hope. This is, in hindsight, a 3-1 certainty if you just scratch the Guineas run. Now, Willie Carson was saying before the race that how can a horse this small win? And Ryan Moore was even saying, well, you can never be sure. But on the basis of everything that Aidan O'Brien's done in the game, won 10 Guineas, is now won 10 Derbies, if you just listen to Aidan O'Brien and forget everything that you've seen and just go in as an investment in City of Troy, it's a massive missed opportunity, I feel.
He's not a pony of a horse either. Like, he's not, you wouldn't call him big, but he's not diminutive. Like, he's not tiny. When you see him in the flesh, he's a nice looking horse. He's not going to take your breath away, but he's probably quite well proportioned. I would believe what they're saying, that, like, I'm no judge of an animal, but you see something, you're like, you see horse in the parade ring, you're like, I wouldn't go near him with a barge pole. He's not that type of horse. His full brother Bertinelli, I'm pretty sure they are full brothers. He trained on 100%. The family's full of Warfront breds who actually sort of did well, like, and Justify, his horses are training on. And he's running and I do remember the interview with Aidan O'Brien I did for Racing TV. They played it over and over in any sort of break they had in the schedule of the last couple of weeks. It was really weird because you turn on the TV in the middle of this boring afternoon and my voice would be the first thing I'd hear. I was like, this is weird. But they're playing this Aidan O'Brien interview over and over. And at least if something good comes of the Derby, you can't say you haven't heard it. Because
don't leave the TV on overnight. You're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and going, what?
Yeah. I don't know if they do it at night, but they definitely do it during the day. But it's kind of like North Korea. It was just like Aidan O'Brien, bit of Paddy to me. But it was an interview with Aidan O'Brien, and they obviously felt that you don't get access to Aidan O'Brien that often. The one thing he said was, I said, do you think he's trained on? He said, what's trained on? He said, there's no... If a horse hasn't trained on, he said, he has a problem. And they never implied this horse had a problem. But I will say this, and I've said it elsewhere on the Jump To It podcast, it was like, I wouldn't be going overboard about the training performance by Aidan in this instance. This horse failed in the Guineas rather than was a spectacular success in the Derby, because he clearly, and Aidan would say exactly this himself, he has an enormous ability. Like, what he did at Epsom was staggering to watch in a messy enough race. Whatever happened in the Guineas was a failure of the whole enterprise, that he ran that badly. And it's still the only black mark on his CV was how badly he ran. But the offers that Aidan put forward, it was just hard enough to know, did he fully believe them himself? You know, about the breathing, the heart rate in the stalls, that he left him undercooked. I don't think Aidan trains his horses in the Guineas for the Guineas anymore. I think he trains them for a bit further down the line. And I suspect, JD, and I'm speculating here, I suspect he believes what he says about this horse, that he's the best 2-year-old he's trained. That's backed up by the figures.
But he said last week he's the best Derby horse he's ever trained.
Best Derby horse he's trained. That's probably open to debate, but you can certainly make a case for it. But he basically said, you know, that we messed up in the Guineas. I feel he didn't train him to anywhere near 100% for the Guineas, anywhere near. And the horse on the day, he had a bit of a fright maybe in terms of his heart rate, and he hadn't nearly enough fitness to actually go through with it. I think they did. You saw with, St. Nicholas Abbey in the Guineas, he was quite well beaten. Auguste Rodin bombed out in the Guineas. They've had lots of horses disappoint the Guineas that went on to better things.
Yeah.
I don't think he was near... I think they have a long-term campaign for this horse. That's fine. It was that he ran so badly.
It's not that they don't want to win the Guineas.
Yeah.
But I think in the past, they win the Guineas first and then they work it out from there. Whereas I actually think they're thinking from the back to front now. They're thinking about, okay, can we get him to the Breeders' Cup Classic potentially on dirt, given he's from Justify, who is the Triple Crown winner on dirt. Mm-hmm. And he's a different type of breeding. Maybe we should space out the campaigns a bit more and have horses run now, not as just as 3-year-olds and you never see them again, where Auguste Rodin's are now running as a 4-year-old, and maybe space out the season a bit more. And you see a lot of horses, the Triple Crown, whatever about Camelot, whatever, Triple Crown hasn't been done since 1970. And even Shergar was beaten in the King George. So a lot of horses, sometimes, it's very hard to be a Sea of the Stars and to just go through the season unbeaten. So maybe the theory is, maybe if we don't win the Guineas, maybe it's better if we win races later in the season. And maybe I think there is a desire there to try and win races on dirt from Matty Doyle. Yeah,
there is with him, because he's by an American stallion. If he were by like
Galileo,
they wouldn't go near it, because, you know, it's been argued elsewhere that unless you have an American pedigree, and it's a weird thing, but unless you're American bred, you don't have much of a chance on the dirt.
If you go to Breeders' Cup, right? Yeah. It's turf and it's dirt. All the European horses win on the grass. All the American horses win on the dirt. Been there.
The occasional American horse will win on the turf, but they had a brief period where Ravens Pass, I think, won it when they changed to the artificial surface. So the European horses came in then. I'm not sure what to make of dirt as a concept, but American horses are bred for the dirt. That's fine, because they run on the dirt. Justify was a dirt horse. The problem is, on the other side, it's a very European pedigree, so it may or may not work out. But I imagine they want to try that. And if he does have the dirt option, he then could have the potential to, be a sire of relevance in America. Whereas if he fails on the dirt, now I'm not sure they're going to do it because it's a little bit risky. If it fails on the dirt, they can offer after race, well, he doesn't handle the dirt. But then others will be saying, well, he's run 3 races here now this season and he's disappointed in 2 of them. So maybe there's an issue there. So the more I think about it, I feel something like the Eclipse, Champion Stakes. He won't run the Irish Derby. I can't see any. Maybe. I don't think he'll run the Arc because I think there's a strong potential for soft ground there. I actually feel there's a really good bet in the Arc at 50-1. There are 2 really good bets in the Arc. We might save them for members this week. One of them is trained in Ballydoyle. I don't see him running the Arc because the ground could well come up soft. And I'm not sure he'll run over 1.5 miles again, to be honest. I think they might look at the Eclipse, Champion Stakes, and maybe see about those races in
Breeders'
the States.
Cup Classic would be the
classic
obvious one.
I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him try the dirt. I'd love to see him try the dirt in the Breeders' Cup. Like JD, we'd have to go to that, wouldn't we?
Yes. Well, you might be busy. You'd be busy enough. Are you gravy man? Like, do you know you're a foodie? Do you make Bisto or do you ever?
I like gravy. Yeah, I was at Christmas this year. I had my first row with my sister Elaine, I'd say in about 30 years, where she threw the gravy down the sink that I'd been working on for 2 or 3 hours because she just thought it was crap that was left. And I was like, and I walked up the stairs like a prima donna, and she said, "Geez, I haven't seen that before," because I'd worked so hard in the gravy. So I actually do put effort into gravy.
Because
I'm not a bit.
There is a phrase, different gravy,
different
and
gravy.
Brian Moore is different gravy. Like when you look at the ride he gave City of Troy, first of all, isn't the worry that the horse might be a bit freaked out of the stalls, right? So he just lobbed out of the first stall.
That's exactly the word.
Just lobbed out of it. And then calm. There's this fascinating jockey cam from Kieran Schumacher, who was on God's Window, one of the outsiders in the race, and he was tracking Ryan Moore like the whole way up the hill and then down to Tottenham Corner, like, pretty much most of the race, and then suddenly, gone.
It's like if you cycle one of a decent class of road bike, JD, and you get on it, then when you get on the top class bike and you press the kind of acceleration and you pedal and it goes, you get this feeling, you're like, Jesus, that's City of Troy relative to the Derby horses. And I don't think you're on about the jockey cam, like we don't show it enough, like between the drone footage and all the other footage of how good that is. When you see a mid-race move like that, it's rare it happens to me now in a race where I was watching the race, like, Jesus, look at that. Like he just like slews through the field. This is like a horse with 3 stone in hand. And it was a messy race. Like he was drawn 1. He didn't break that well by design. And then he had to kind of from Tatton Corner.
Patience.
He was in messy position, loose horse to deal with, which I didn't think was ideal. You have a horse ambient friendly. People challenging the ride on him. Like, what was he supposed to do? He's travelling really well. But he had a horse travelling.
He did get the breaks in that Los Angeles and...
yeah.
Euphoric, just kind of almost the sea parted and he just went straight through on the inside. He did then.
But what's interesting for me now is where he goes next. B is will he not train on, but will he maintain his form? Which I think he will.
Look at the way he went through the line. Ryan Moore said he was green in the last furlong.
I met a guy before races who works for the IHRB, and he said to me, he's a steward, and he said the day he won his maiden City of Troy at the Curragh, I was up on that. If you see at the Curragh, I was up on that kind of, it's up in a little bit of a height, and you have your binoculars out, and you're kind of watching the horse pass lines. And he said, I've never seen a horse after the line do what he did. He was so fast and so hard to pull up. And that's exactly what Aidan O'Brien was kind of saying last year. Like, and what I loved about him last year was when you get after him, he'd gradually get into this turbo and just like so strong, nothing could live with him. And that's more what he did. And the last thing I want to say about that is, he's quite inbred to a Galileo bred mare. So while some trainers and breeders have done it to breed a horse whose grandfather is Galileo to a mare whose father is Galileo is probably a cross too close. So he will be, in theory, he'll get a lot of the mares that would have gone to Galileo because he will be Galileo's potential replacement for a lot of mares next season who are the outcross and are when not, maybe not next season, but whenever. I suspect he'll be retired at the end of this year. But that'll be fascinating because I do wonder as at Stroud how he's going to get on.
Well done to Aidan O'Brien and Ballydoyle and everybody, and Aidan doubled down and He was absolutely right, and the pressure was on, and they had the camera on him and his wife and everybody there at Epsom, and he was pretty relaxed.
Thought that was very interesting as well, because generally I'm not a fan of that. I think it's an intrusion.
It is an intrusion,
you know. And was it Paul Nichols, or I think it was Paul Nichols who lost the plot with the camera crew before? It was probably around the time of like Demon and Kodo, where there was like mass hysteria. Paul Nichols is extremely giving with the media. Like, he's brilliant. And brilliant to deal with for the media. Probably not everyone's cup of tea in terms of the stuff he says at times, but I think he's brilliant in the media. Aidan O'Brien has been like exceptionally giving with his time on this, and I think it's a private moment in a sense to watch your horse, especially when there's a lot on the line here.
Everything on the line.
Everything on the line. He doubled down. I know it's a first world situation, but his life is racing, and he has a potential, like the cost of this horse bombing out again is massive, absolutely massive, as well as the sporting aspect to it. And I really did think that was fascinating, but it was just class, to be honest. Like, it was just to see a horse, like an Irish trained horse after Dermot Weld had won the Oaks. It was class to see, and I did find that trainer Cam quite enthralling.
And also, this is the British establishment race, so 244 years to have an Irish trainer win it 10 times more than anybody else is pretty cool. You know,
it's an amazing race, the Derby, and in fairness, as they went in, it wouldn't happen nowadays, except for the fact that it's a prisoner to tradition because it's been run there for so long. Epsom is an odd track. You've the classic weekend, and other than that, it's not really mapped in terms of, you know, flat racing. The Epsom Derby trial itself isn't generally a big thing. But as you're going into stalls, you're like, so much history here, and they're running in this completely unconventional track. And Ryan Moore is just bringing a horse in that he's clearly not entirely 100% what he's going to do, and he has to go from gate one around this mad track, and it all worked out.
Well, fair play to Dermot Weld. 1981 was his only other Oaks winner with Blue Wind, ridden by Lester Piggott. So 43 years later, he wins with Azalea. And Limerick's Chris Hayes on this one, and had a spin to remember.
Yeah, and there was a disappointment in this race that I'll probably talk about later on in the members aspect of the show. We did hot favourite in the race who didn't run her race, Alang. But Azalea in any sense would have been very hard to beat. And I was there last year in Cork when she won her maiden, and I really liked her. And wasn't it Cork she won her maiden? And this year I've kind of followed her, and I was delighted for Chris Hayes. I think he's a great lad. He's done very well for Dermot. Well, he's a good rider as well. Very good rider, Chris. And he said everything went like clockwork, but you have to have confidence. Like, this is a big ride for Chris. You know, and he delivered.
Luxembourg as well won the Coronation Cup also on the Friday. Good front running ride from Ryan Moore. So that's an Irish win in the Oaks, an Irish win in the Derby last weekend. Just going to go through one race in Navan in this section. The listed Kuyonga Stakes, fillies and mares over a mile on Saturday, 3:30, good to firm ground, 9 runners. Everlasting was outclassed in Irish 1,000 guineas, but third behind Azalea at the course at Navan earlier this season, and this is a much more reasonable examination. Ryan Moore comes over to ride. Do you think it's going to win?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, because that run in the Guineas was so bad. If you were to look at the course run behind Azalea, as you mentioned, JD, like, and Purple Lily second on that occasion, you know, it was a bit of a bunch finish, and even Noel Mead's horse, who ran well,
Caught You Looking.
She didn't run badly at all in the Oaks. She's really, really solid form, but this horse flopped in the Guineas. Like, so I'm going to take her on with Blue Drum. Now,
yes, I have this one. Yeah,
Give me a double,
the
J.
colour code.
So when I interviewed Aidan O'Brien that day, Racing TV will you know, justifiably say, can you call into somebody on the way home to make it like, to give us more content, so call into Paddy Toomey. But prior to that, when I was at Willie Mullins, they're like, will you call into Jessica Harrington on the way home, right? And this is at the start of the season. A lot of scones. Jessica Harrington was just brilliant to deal with. And I asked Shane Foley, give us a few horses to ask. Like, my mind isn't... I've just come from a meeting about Punchestown here, and now I'm going to Jessica Harrington's. My brain is frazzled. He gave me 2 or 3 horses. One of them was Blue Drum, and it didn't really run its race the last day. It was a messy start at the Curragh. I think the way they were talking, there's a lot more to come from this horse.
As well.
It was on soft ground. Blue Point's having a brilliant time, but steps up to a mile on decent, good to firm ground even at Navan. I think she should run a lot better.
She won her maiden last year, and this is only her third run.
Yeah, and you know, in fairness, JD, like, you can say that with a rating of 102, Everlasting, if Everlasting runs her run behind Azalea, you'd imagine she will be tough to beat, but it looks a big if.
Okay, so is this the McMahon Double J at a good price, Blue Drum?
It is.
Okay, there you go. That's our tip for the weekend. Blue Drum. When we agree, we generally do okay, folks. So, look, we'll make sure you do €1 each way and don't gamble more than you can afford. But this is the Racing Pod and Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. But if you're looking for more, including our analysis of the Saturday cards at Punchestown, Haydock and more at Navan, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast with all of our racing tips, insights and stories from the week's action.